Hello everyone, my name is Stanley St. Rose, and today we're going to be talking about The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. Now, before I go into summary and analysis of this work, please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and or comment so that the channel can continue to grow. Now, this book is incredibly sad. It's a very simple book, a very short book to read, but extremely sad. Basically, what happens, we meet a young boy at the age of 9, very young, very naive. He doesn't really know what's going on in the world. He doesn't know that World War II is happening, and his father is a Nazi soldier. He's a commandant, and Hitler comes to his father's house, and basically we're told or we're shown within this book that his father is very ambitious, and Bruno's father is, he's trying. Of course, if Hitler's coming to your house, you know everything's polished, everything's prepared. And the family is a military family, and they're all about what Hitler, the direction that Hitler was directing the country. And so Bruno's really young. He's 9, and he's just trying to figure out the world. He doesn't know anything about history, anything about reality. He doesn't know what's going on in the world. He doesn't know anything about Jewish people. He doesn't know anything about anything. I mean, he's just understanding the world around him. The most important things to Bruno when we're first introduced to him is playing with his friends, going on adventures, going to school, um, fighting with his sister, doing things that young children do, like exploring around your house. And so we really read this story from a child's perspective, and it's really interesting to get a child's perspective on war or about war, especially to get a child's perspective about World War II and Hitler and one of Hitler's soldiers. And basically in Berlin, we really get introduced to Bruno and his family. We get introduced to Gretel, his sister, and her dolls, and how they're just, you know, from the beginning, it just seemed like they're a normal family who are just, kids are going to school, kids are playing with dolls, kids are being kids, and the adults are doing adult stuff. And Bruno's father and his mother, they pretty much, because of what Hitler tells them, or Hitler comes over to their house, has dinner, gives Bruno's dad a promotion, and he's headed for Auschwitz. And the family moves from Berlin, and they go to Auschwitz. And Bruno's not happy. Gretel is not happy. The mother's not happy. Maria, the housemaid, is not happy. But they all, they are in a military household, and so the father decides everything. Bruno's father is a very serious man. He gives orders. He doesn't take them, except when they're coming from Hitler, of course. And they move to Auschwitz. The kids are not happy. They leave all their friends behind. And they go to this new house that, it's a big house where it's big enough for soldiers to come and have food and eat and drink and do things like that. They're a military family that they're living quite lavish lives where they have rooms and servants and maids and things like that. So they're living quite lavish lives. Bruno he's growing up in a world to him where it's a pretty good life. You get plenty of food. You have a great childhood. Your parents, have money. You live in these big houses. But from Bruno's point of view, going from Berlin to Auschwitz is just a huge downgrade. Now, of course, that's a downgrade, but the part of Auschwitz that he goes to is to a nice home compared to the camp, of course. Compared to the concentration camp, the home that Bruno goes to is very nice. And it's a great place to live when you're comparing it to, well, to most homes and of course the concentration camp. And when Bruno gets there or on the ride there and he starts to see, or when he sees the camp, or like kind of like a glimpse of the camp, he's like, he's a 9-year-old boy and we're getting his perspective, how he sees the world. And the world is just this kind of like, he's seeing it like a child. He's thinking about friends and food and house and his house, his room, things like that. Fights with his sister, growing up, not being called little. All the things that a little kid would think about. And when he gets to Auschwitz, he gets to this house where his parents are living. He's thinking about friends. He's thinking about who he's going to spend time with. He's thinking about building swings and going on adventures, not war and bloodshed and Jewish people. And so they get to their new household, and of course, it's not what anybody wants. The mom doesn't want to be there because they all have left their friends and their loved ones, their other family members behind. So everybody is in Auschwitz, and Bruno is looking at this camp. He's looking at the people, and he's so fascinated. He just wants to understand this mystery of this camp. He sees a bunch. It's all men. The part where he sees, it's all men. Or what he can see of it. This is all from Bruno's perspective. He sees all men. He sees young, old, middle age, all men of all ages and sizes. They're all wearing gray striped pajamas. And they're hungry. They're being killed. Bruno doesn't see the killing part, but he does see that that it's not really a happy place, or it doesn't seem like whatever is going on there is not the greatest thing. Lieutenant Cutler is a soldier that appears throughout the book, and he taunts Bruno, or he gets on Bruno's nerves a lot. Cutler is pretty much a teenager, and Gretel develops a crush on him within the book, and later he gets sent to another camp because Bruno's father just didn't want him because of his family history. So the book goes on, and everybody kind of like have their grievances and complaints about Auschwitz. I'm sure that a lot of Jewish people had their grievances and complaints and disagreements about Auschwitz as well. But they were living on the other side of the fence. Now, let me explain to you guys a little bit about the layout of Bruno's world. So Bruno lives in this really nice house in Auschwitz where he gets plenty of food. He gets his own room, and it's nice. He has servants, and has Maria, a maid, and slowly Bruno's starting to understand the world around him. Since he's lived a pampered life, he doesn't think about, like Maria, for example. He didn't think about other people's lives because Maria, for example, he thought that she was just a servant. But he starts to develop, a better understanding of the world around him, and he starts to think, well, Maria probably has a past. She's probably a person. There's probably more to her than we're looking at, which is really fascinating in terms of deeper meaning here, in terms of analysis. The Nazis looked at the Jewish people, as if they weren't human. I mean, they were killing them, and they thought that they deserved to die. Bruno, for the first time, he looked at the servant. Later, he looked at Pavel and Maria. He's like, oh, our servants are not just servants; they're actually people. They have feelings and emotions, and we shouldn't disrespect them just because they're beneath us or they're working for us. They're actually human beings with families and parents and maybe children or somebody who loves them somewhere out there. So Bruno starts to understand the world little by little. And his relationship with Maria is very, very interesting because he starts to understand people's feelings and emotions. Because in one part of the novel, Bruno even calls her a part of the family, which warms Maria's heart. But she understands the world better because she's older. But Bruno, he's looking at this from a mind of a child, and he's just trying to figure out why are some people angry, why are the Nazis angry, why are some people are starving, or why is there so many why is there so much mistreatment between the soldiers and the people in the camp? And it's like when you're reading this book, you as an adult, or you of a person who knows about World War II and Nazis and the concentration camp, you really know what's going on. You know that the Jewish people are being killed. You know that what the concentration camp is for. You know what happened in World War II. You're like, oh, Bruno, you just don't know what's going on around you. People, figures like Hitler are coming by, and his dad is a high ranked soldier, is within the ranks of the Nazis, and soldiers are coming to and fro throughout the book, and Bruno's completely oblivious of the horrors and the horror that's happening before his eyes. He just doesn't know. He's completely ignorant. He's completely unaware. And this is the innocence of a child. Everybody looks down at Bruno because they see him as a kid, as literally like a toddler, because he doesn't understand anything. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't have the vocabulary. He doesn't have the experience. They just see him as a little tiny kid. Like everybody talks down to him, and even Gretel, who's like older than Bruno. And now, she was 12, so she can understand a little bit better. She doesn't understand anything about war and things like that in history, but like she knows a little bit more about what's going on than Bruno. And so the story goes on. Later, Bruno starts to get bored. He builds a swing. He falls off of it. And Pavel, this chef or this server for this family, he fixes up Bruno's womb because he gets cut badly and starts bleeding, and Pavel fixes him up, and Pavel tells him that he used to be a doctor, and Bruno's shocked by it. He's like, wait, why are you telling me you were a doctor in a past life? You're just serving us food now. What's going on? So like snippets of the truth come at Bruno throughout this work, but he doesn't understand that these people were once people, but because of the war, they've lost their lives, and now they're in service positions, or they're in positions to where they could be killed. And so the story goes on, and Bruno meets a boy in striped pajamas, by the name of Schmal. I could be pronouncing his name wrong, but it's Schmal, or Schmal. Okay, but yeah, Schmal. I could be pronouncing that wrong, but he meets him, and he's on the other side of the fence one day while Bruno's out exploring, and they become really good friends. Bruno starts to bring him food, and they start to talk about all types of different things. And they're both 9. They both have the same birthday. They both are isolated. The parallels between Bruno and Schmal are very interesting. They were both born the same day. One, his father's, a Nazi. And the other one, Schmal's on the other side of the fence. And, his father's not a Nazi, and his father is pretty much killing Schmal and every other Jewish person in that camp. So Bruno is oblivious to this. He's just really nice. He's bringing Schmal food. They're having these little meetings, and they become great friends. Great friends. They have all these conversations about life, about home, and they try to not hurt each other as much as they can, because what's really interesting is it's almost like they're both in Auschwitz, but they're both kind of like being tortured in different ways. Now Schmal his whole world has been destroyed. But Bruno, in the same way, his whole world has been destroyed. They're both isolated. They both don't have friends, and they find friendship in each other. Bruno, he had to leave all his friends behind in Berlin. And Schmal, well, all his friends were left behind or probably killed. I mean, of course, Schmal's life, since he's in the concentration camp. So pretty much, again, the fence divides. The big fence divides Auschwitz, the concentration camp between Auschwitz, where the house where the Bruno's family lives, and where the soldiers, come to dinner and spend time with their leader, in the camp. And so these both boys are different side of the fence, but they both are experiencing the same type of emotions of isolation. Bruno's not experiencing hunger and beatings and things like that, but he is experiencing isolation, and everybody looking down at him and thinking that he doesn't understand and thinking that he's stupid. And the same thing goes for Schmal. He's small. He's a little boy. He doesn't know much of anything that's going on around him. And the only person he has to talk to is Bruno. And the book kind of goes like that. They have their meetings. Some days Bruno can't come because it's raining. Some days he comes, and they have some great conversations. So they have an appointment to meet and talk and things like that. It's really interesting how they get introduced to each other, because at first, Schmal was like the way that the book talks about it, it's like, he was like a speck, then a dot, then a blur. I'm just paraphrasing here, but slowly and slowly as they get to each other, Schmal just seemed like nothing, and then he became something. The more and more they came closer and got to know each other. So they found each other in a very dark situation. Bruno has always had a plenty in his life, and Schmal, well, never had plenty because of his current situation. It's really sad what happens throughout the book, because there's several really close situations where Bruno and Schmal's friendship, between the friendship divided by the fence, is almost discovered several times. There's one scene where Gretel, while talking to Gretel, Bruno reveals that he has as a friend. Gretel tries to press down to figure out what kind of friend this is, and Bruno says that it's an imaginary friend, and that hides the truth from Gretel. Later, it almost comes out when he's talking to his dad that he's friend with a Jewish boy, and they're divided by a fence. But again, he gets out of it. There's another scene where they came the closest, and this is where it was heart wrenching, absolutely heart wrenching. Where Schmal gets brought into Bruno's house, and he has to clean glasses, and Cutler is the one that brings Schmal into the house to clean glasses. And Bruno finds Schmal in the kitchen, and he gives him food to eat, and Schmal calls Bruno his friend, and Cutler almost goes insane. He probably could have killed Schmal, because Cutler, this lieutenant, is not afraid to kill. He killed a dog. He beat up Pavel because Pavel dropped alcohol or wine on him, or he went after or insulted Pavel. He has several scenes where Cutler is a jerk or a brute or just plain cruel. He could have killed Schmal right then and there, but he doesn't, because Bruno says, I don't know Schmal, he means nothing, and I don't know who he is. Basically, that's how the story goes. This story keeps your heart beating throughout everything, because you're like, man, you want Schmal and Bruno to remain friends. You don't want it to be discovered, because as an adult, as a person who knows what's going on in the war and this forbidden friendship, you know what's going on. You know what this means. You don't want it to be discovered. But Bruno doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know what it means. He just thinks he has a friend. And he doesn't know anything about Jewish people. He doesn't know anything about Nazis. He doesn't, and to him, his father's a great man. The soldiers are great people. They're just the soldiers of his country. I mean, from a 9-year-old's mind, Nazis are just soldiers, and Schmal is just living at home. He thinks he doesn't even think that he's in Auschwitz. He actually calls it out with because he's a kid. He can't pronounce it right. He thinks that Auschwitz is probably this wonderland of people sitting in their front yards and old people rocking in chairs and things like that. He thinks it might be a wonderland, or he even calls them his neighbors, but they're not his neighbors. His dad is slowly killing them, and all of this happens. All of this takes place after the scene in the kitchen where Bruno almost got Schmal killed. He apologizes to Schmal. Schmal, forgives him, and still they don't really know. They don't really understand the heaviness of what's going on around them. And this, by the end of the book, or really at the end of the book, this is where it gets really sad, really deadly, because Schmal's father goes missing, and then what happens is Bruno is about to leave Auschwitz because his dad is and his mom, they've decided that the mom and the kids would go back to Berlin and go back home, and Bruno's, he tells Schmal this that he's gonna leave him. And Schmal tells him, well, you gotta, I lost my dad. I don't know where he went. And pretty much you reading this as an adult or as a person who knows what went on in World War II, and you're like, yeah, Schmal's father is pretty much dead. Yeah. Yeah, because if anybody goes missing in a concentration camp, you can pretty much put it together that they're dead. And so the story goes on, and, it comes close to the end of the book. Bruno's thinking about, or he's close to going back home, and Schmal doesn't know where his dad is. And on their last meeting, Bruno decides he's going to cross the fence, and he's going to go help Schmal find his dad. Now, there was a lice outbreak, and Bruno's hair had to be cut off. This happens within the book, and this kind of sets up the scene for Bruno to cross the fence because Schmal's hair is cut off and everybody's head is cut off within the concentration camp. So Bruno looks like the people in the concentration camp. So he cuts off his hair. His hair is cut off. Schmal gets him the striped pajamas, and you as the reader, you're like, oh man, this is really bad. You shouldn't cross over that fence. Bad things are going to happen if you cross over that fence. And, Bruno gets dirty. He takes off his clothes. He leaves them on his family, or he leaves them on his side of the fence. He takes off his good clothes. Schmal gets him a pair of pajamas. He puts on the pair of pajamas. He has a bald head. He crosses under the fence where it was, small enough or good enough or wide enough for him to get through the fence. And Bruno and Schmal, they go exploring throughout Auschwitz, and after a good moment of time of trying to find Schmal's dad, there's a drill that gets called, and Bruno and Schmal, they get pushed into the drill, and Bruno's thinking to himself in the drill that it's just a march. They're going on a march. It's just something very simple. And his dad couldn't possibly be doing anything evil or deadly. But Bruno and Schmal, they get pushed into this group, and they get walked into a gas chamber, and they're killed, and Bruno dies, and it's terrifying. And of course, the final lines of the book is, there's a search for Bruno. His father searched throughout the house and the camp for Bruno, but nobody can find Bruno. Bruno is dead. And whatever they do to the bodies after they gas them, well, They did that to Bruno because nobody knows where Bruno is, and I mean he's wearing the striped pajamas. He has a bald head. He blends into the rest of the um, Jews, and it's even kind of funny because when he's in the gas chamber with Schmal, they hold hands, or Bruno holds Schmal's hand, and well, he doesn't think that he's gonna be killed. He just thinks there's like a drill going on, and they're both gassed to death. And I mean, they're 9 years old. They don't really understand what's happening until they start dying. But the book doesn't go into that much detail. We you can just get what's going on. You can just get what happens um, within the book. You can understand it. And yeah, just they died. And then like Bruno's father goes looking for him. Gretel starts crying, even though she was a horrible sister to Bruno. She regrets, well, that her brother goes missing. The mother is, of course, the mother, Bruno's mother goes insane, or she doesn't go insane literally, but this really affects her. Her boy goes missing in a concentration camp, and no one really knows where he is. I mean, they do find his clothes eventually on the side of the fence, and later the father could make it out that his son crossed the fence, but well, he lost his son. Yeah, he lost his son, and yeah, that's how the book ends. Bruno just goes missing, and his family doesn't know what happened ultimately. The father becomes more ruthless to the Jews and probably kills more people because he probably blames the Jews, because he probably thinks that they had something to do with it. We know what happened to Bruno, but they don't know, and he just vanishes into thin air, and that's the boy in the striped pajamas. Very, very ice cold novel. The ending very shocking. I mean, the innocence. I mean, you really get the perspective of innocence in any given situation. When kids experience things, they don't really understand things until they're much older. And sometimes, you can have adults. When adults start looking back at their childhoods and things that happened to them, it starts to make sense of horrific things that happened to them as children. Um, and Bruno dies in an innocent way, and he doesn't know what he's entered to. But he dies like a Jew in a concentration camp, and there's so much. And in many ways, um, Bruno left Germany and he was taken to Auschwitz just like the Jews were taken to Auschwitz. I mean, it must have, but he ends up dying just like the Jewish people. So this Nazi soldier, or this commandant, Bruno's father, ends up. He probably. I mean, we there's no confirmation of this, but we can say that the father, his father probably killed him because the orders come from Bruno's father, and so the gassing of these Jewish people. I mean, his father doesn't know, but his father is probably responsible for killing his own son, which is quite chilling. So this whole book, there's so many ways you can look at defense, the isolation between Bruno and Schmal, but these two boys, they were born on the same day, they have the same birthday, they were on different sides of the fence. But then at the end, they ended up in the same place. They were born on the same day in different cities and different places, but they were born on the same day and they died on the same day holding hands. But with them, there was no hatred. There was no war between Bruno and Schmal. They absolutely cared about each other. There's even a place in the book where they went to hug each other because they were such close friends. So this Jewish boy and this German boy, They were really good friends. And when you don't have the politics, when you don't have these societal norms, when you don't have the lines that divide people, because these boys knew nothing about countries, they knew nothing about nationality, they knew nothing about nothing. They were just two young boys, two human beings living on this planet. And this book really shows, in terms of deeper meaning, in terms of analysis, this book really shows you when humans don't have the divisions of fences, of nationalities, of all the things that divide us, we're just human beings. Okay, we're just human beings created by God, um, put on this planet, and we're all human, men and women, all human, and it's the nationalities, the differences, those things. It's those things that divide us and separate us and make us kill each other. Because even Gretel, she throughout the book she tries to show Bruno that she's smarter than him, but she can't really make up the differences between the Jewish people and her people. I mean, she doesn't even know what to call herself. She just knows that, well, from listening to her elders and her teachers, she just knows that Jewish people are bad because that's what she's been told. But she doesn't understand why. She just believes that she's better than them because that's what she's told. Um, so kids are blank slates. That's one thing that this book proves, that kids are blank slates, and whatever you jam into their heads, sooner or later they will start believing it, because Gretel is not that far away in age wise from Bruno, but she has a couple years on him, and because she starts to believe into the propaganda or the things that her elders were telling her, she started to hate Jewish people, just like her elders, because that's what she was told. So, children, when you look at things from a children's perspective, the war is entirely something different. Bruno saw friends and people and kids to play with. He didn't see enemies. But the adults, well, it was the exterminators versus, well, the people they were exterminating. Wow. It just so happened that when you put on the striped pajamas, when you shave your head, the differences blur. And, if you end up on the other side of the fence, you die like Bruno, even though, maybe you're not Jewish. But who can tell the difference? Who can tell the difference? Tell really sad novel. Two 9-year-old boys dying, two best friends dying, and it's just very chilling because two innocent boys, uh, they died in a very dark way, um, and they didn't truly understand the world around them. It's really like when the world around you is on fire and you're in a very tense place, but all you see is roses. You just Bruno, in so many ways, he was walking through his world with rose-colored glasses. So, his world was very rosy at in so many different ways. It was so rosy that even when he goes into Auschwitz as a prisoner, or transitioned to being this 9-year-old boy in the striped pajamas, he thinks it's all going to be fine. It's so, oh man, the most innocent and heartbreaking line of this book is when Bruno is in Auschwitz with the pajamas, with the bald head, and he's on the other side of the fence. And he tells Schmal, well, I need to go back home now so I don't miss dinner. Because to him, Auschwitz was just a visit to his friend or visiting his friend's house. He didn't think of it like visiting a concentration. That's how oblivious and unaware of what's going on of his world. Because he's like, all right, I'm going to put on these pajamas, go into Auschwitz, and help Schmal find his father, and then go back home for dinner. Because in his mind, Auschwitz is just his neighbors, just people on the other side of the fence. But he ends up dead. He ends up dead. Yeah. Wow. 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 Wow, wow, wow. But yeah, that's all I had to say about this work. Please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and or a comment. And I'll see you guys in the next video.